Sprite would mix up the market in the early 2000s, giving us Sprite Remix. Not to get it mixed up with Sprite Tropical Mix, which is a callback to the OG. Sprite Remix would pop into the mid-2000s, offering consumers a fresh look that could be a reference to the wacky and colorful design of the 90s, but also had an enhanced taste that really couldn't be forgotten. My favorite memories with Sprite Remix was having my first sips of tropical and berry clear flavors. Let me just tell you that crisp but fruity blend was alien-like, because I had never experienced something so great tasting, and it definitely got me hooked. I was 8 at the time, but I begged my mom to get me more because it was a perfect blend of what the 2000s was. The original flavor of Sprite Remix would be a successful smash hit, selling around 55 million cases in its first year. This would lead to other flavor offerings under the Sprite Remix brand. It also had a heavier push on the teenage market. The countless commercials of Sprite Remix that would air in the 2000s with slogans such as rethink or refresh would show younger consumers that Sprite was not only for an older demographic. At that time, Sprite also had some interesting ads with a figure or bobblehead known as Miles Thirst or Thirst that would then be used as an entertaining gimmick to sell Sprite. I do remember Miles Thirst also being featured in a Sprite Remix commercial. All of this crazy marketing would fail, however, and by the end of the 2000s, you could no longer find Sprite Remix on store shelves. What would happen to this fruity blend? And was it corporate suits that would ultimately leave Sprite Remix as a 2000s nostalgia piece? For us millennials, the 2000s sugary soda that we think of the most would be Sprite Remix. It really had been one of the defining moments of the 2000s. That colorful can or bottle that brought you back to the 90s era with how the designs were laid out and its great taste of original Sprite with a mix of tropical fruit blend had people searching for years. In the beginning of the 2000s, sales for regular Sprite would decline, mainly because the soft drink market had been saturated with different flavors similar to Sprite Lemon Lime. But it was also because energy drinks like Red Bull were becoming the norm. I mean, just take a look into Mountain Dew and its advertising with Code Red around the time. Corporate suits of Sprite or Coca-Cola would gather questions towards younger demographics to see how to increase sales. These questions would bring forth the solution of creating Sprite Remix. If you remember, in the 2000s, hip-hop had been the country music of today's time, and younger generations were invested in this next wave of pop culture. This would give the corporate suits a new spin on Sprite. Remix would be what Sprite needed to bring in younger consumers, as the word remix of the time symbolized pop culture. I mean, just think back to the last time you burned a CD and you wrote remix on its face. What music comes to mind? Hip hop, right? Coca-Cola would release Sprite Tropical Remix in 2002 and early 2003, and it would open into a successful market. It offered a blend of new flavors that were aimed at the newer energy drink sales and a pop culture reference for younger customers. After 2003, sales were on a refreshed mix, creating the next wave of flavor and nostalgia. Sprite Remix would become pop culture in the mid-2000s, ushering in a new wave of fans with this sugary soda. And this success was due to its crazy marketing behind Remix. Just like its commercial slogan, it was a refresh with a 2000s modern take. The push behind Sprite Remix would feature a host of celebrities from the hip-hop atmosphere. Artist and producer Pharrell Williams could be seen in its commercial success, or what about Biz Markie, who had been a legend in beatboxing culture. But it wasn't just the Remix brand that would see hip-hop as its youthful target for its sales. Sprite had used basketball and hip-hop culture throughout time to promote its lemon lime tastes. I mean, just take a look at the countless Sprite commercials with LeBron James. This type of marketing in the 2000s would give way to Sprite Remix, with its first year of success of 55 million cases being sold. Keep in mind, this was only the tropical remix flavor. But in 2004, the next release of the line would hit the shelves known as Berry Clear. This would also see the same amount of craving as people enjoyed the rich fruity blend. The success of these two flavors would go on to create Aruba Jam in 2005. However, by that time, Sprite Remix would start to see a decline in sales. Some of this backlash was due to Aruba Jam, as some consumers had mixed reviews about the taste. I remember the Aruba Jam had been a little controversial, and this was over people just hating the taste, including some of my friends at the time. In just 2 short years, Sprite Remix would be phased out, and by the end of the 2000s, you could no longer find this beloved refresh on store shelves. After 2005, Sprite Remix would fade from stores. Was it due to the poor sales numbers, or was it because the Sprite Remix brand was a limited time run? In a 2004 New York Times article, it could be stated from a Sprite group director, the strategy was that Sprite Remix would have a short lifespan. It would last a few years, and Sprite or Coca-Cola would pull the plug. Each new flavor they added, like Berry Clear, would stall the sales of the previous flavor, and Remix itself had been seen by corporate suits to be a trend of the ever-changing pop culture atmosphere. However, it wasn't just corporate moves that would lead Sprite Remix to its downfall in the 2000s. The obesity epidemic had reshaped US consumers around the release of Sprite Remix, and documentaries like Super Size Me had focused on the fast food industry, showing audiences the unhealthy side of overconsumption and excess amounts of sugar. Consumers would show mixed reviews about Sprite Remix, as it was more artificial and had shown to have more sugar than original Sprite. Each new flavor they would release would have less sales figures, particularly because people did not agree with the taste. This would lead Sprite to stall all commercials and advertisements for the Remix brand. I do feel that people were becoming less invested with the brand by 2004, which would lead to Sprite Remix becoming a nostalgia piece for future sales. Sprite Remix has recently made a comeback through your favorite freckled ginger known as Wendy's, which can be seen on platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts. While most customers of this time express that it tastes like the 2000s while doing a review taste test, Remix as a brand can only be hinted through Sprite Tropical Mix that can be seen on store shelves today. Gone are the days of the colorful design with that crisp Remix feel. It is interesting to see Sprite or Coca-Cola bring back the Sprite Remix brand in some form, because it left a tropical taste that consumers would never forget, including myself. And even though Remix could be seen as a marketing gimmick through the powerful force of hip-hop, it had left a community behind 2000s nostalgia asking, what happened to Sprite Remix?